Okay, so in the Bible so far, we have a number of tensions and problems that have popped up. And I want to remind you of two of the big ones, two of the very, very big problems. And one of them is one that in churches all over the land and for many, many years we're pretty cued into, and that's the problem of human estrangement from God. That there's been a break in the relationship because humans decided, we're good, we're going to do things our own way, as evidenced in the third page of the Bible, Genesis chapter 3. Humans said, no, we're going to do what seems right in our eyes and not listen to your instruction. And it creates this break in the relationship. So that's a problem. There's another problem, however, that doesn't get talked about as much. And that's the problem of humans having broken relationship with one another. And this also started in page 3 of the Bible, when right after deciding that they're going to do what seems right in their own eyes, the man and the woman, what? They're like ashamed and naked, and they've got to hide from one another. So it's like they've been together, but they're like, oh, we can't trust each other. And then this just continues to amplify over the pages of Genesis and really reaches this climactic stage when humans kind of join forces. It's like, we're going to rejoin heaven and earth on our own terms, and it's represented by the story of the Tower of Babel. And what does God do is he creates a flood of confusion among them, as represented by different languages. And what happens to humans is they go into these different ethnicities or tribes. In Genesis chapter 10, it's modeled as 70 nations. So here are the families of the earth. They're all separated from one another and competing with one another. It's tribalism. So you have the estrangement of humans, any human, from God's family, God's own, family. Being a part of the divine family is imagined in Genesis chapter 1 as his images. That's now broken. And then humans have these broken relationships with each other, not just on an individual basis, but also in nation to nation. It's two major problems. Well, so what does God do to begin to address this? He's got a rescue plan. And the most recent iteration of this rescue plan, when we're in Exodus, is to pick out this elderly childless couple and say, I'm going to make a nation from you. It's Genesis chapter 12, and starting verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you into a great nation. That's cool. And I will bless you. That's really cool. And make your name great. Super duper cool. And you shall be a blessing. Okay. How? Well, I will bless those who bless you. And the one who curses you, I will curse. Well, that sounds protective. This is the line we often skip over. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So Abraham was chosen. He was elect. He was picked out of all the people on the earth. For what purpose? That through him, all these dispossessed families of the earth would be blessed. Lest we forget that, Exodus chapters 18 and 19 are addressing these two issues. The issue of human estrangement from God and being a part of God's family in chapter 19, but also this human relationship that's been divided in chapter 18. We have a moment of peace with each of these relationships. Chapter 18, verse 1. Now Jethro, remember him from chapter 3? The priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law. He heard about everything that Elohim had done for Moses and for Israel, his people. How Yahweh had brought Israel out of Egypt. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took in Moses' wife Zipporah. Remember her? After he, that's Moses, had sent her away. And her 2 sons, one of whom was named Gershom, which means immigrant. For Moses said, I have been a stranger in a foreign land. And the other was named Eleazar. God is my help. For he said, the God of my father was my help and saved me from the sword of Pharaoh. Okay, Jethro, he's an interesting character. This is Moses' father-in-law. We'll get to the different names for him in a second. He is not descended from Israel. He is not an Israelite. He's a Midianite. He is descended from Abraham, but through Abraham's wife after Sarah passed away, Keturah. Did you know that he had a wife after Sarah passed away? That's in the Genesis class. And had children through her. Jethro's descended from one of those children. So the important point here is that he's not from the chosen or elect line. He is one of the members of the families of the earth. In fact, the Midianites have had conflict with the chosen line already, because remember, they were involved with Joseph's kidnapping and selling into slavery. They were part of that group. So what's he doing here? This is the time for the chosen people, isn't it? The text says that he's a priest, and what that essentially means, because I know all sorts of questions come up. Well, was he a priest of Yahweh? Or I think he was a priest of Yahweh. The text does not make that abundantly clear, whether he was exclusive to Yahweh or not, but simply that he was a priest. And a priest is a mediator between heaven and earth. It's somebody who offers sacrifices. So this is Moses's, the family, his adoptive family, if you will. After he left Egypt, he met his wife at that well. He drove off some people that were making life difficult for Zipporah, and Zipporah's family is represented now by Jethro. So if you remember in, I think, Exodus chapter 2, there's a different name, Ruel or Reuel in Hebrew. Well, are these two different people? Are these the same people? Welcome to the conversation, right? A lot of discussion about this. The majority of scholars seem to have landed on, like many characters in the Bible, that these are two names for the same person. Reuel may have been his given name, or the name that has been passed down as the name that he would have been called. It means friend of God. And Jethro, more like a title, which means surplus or supreme one. So that could be. But there are also theories about these being two different members of Zipporah's family. Isn't that fun? So you can read about that if you want. I think there might be whole books written on that. Verse 5. Then Jethro, and in case you've forgotten, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness where he was camped at the mountain of God. And he sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons with her. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and he bowed down and kissed him, and they asked each other about their welfare and went to the tent. So in these verses and some of the preceding ones, we learned an interesting fact, and that is that Zipporah and Moses' sons did not accompany him all the way to Egypt, and they weren't there for all of the plagues and the Passover and the passing through the Red Sea. They weren't there. Zipporah stepped out of the story after that strangeness that happened on the way to Egypt. Do you remember that? Where she's like, you're a bridegroom of blood, and touched him with the foreskin, and it's like, man, because Yahweh was out to kill you. Remember that story? Well, after that, apparently, she went back to live with her father-in-law in Midian, and she wasn't present. If we take the position, and I think that this is an insightful part of that story, if we take the position that story was included by the Moses writing team because it's supposed to remind us of what happened when Abraham went to Egypt with his wife, and it was a terrible mess, that this was a preventing of Moses' taking the same approach that Abraham took and that Isaac at one point took. And he didn't apparently have one of his sons, perhaps both of them, circumcised. And so Zipporah was like, I'm going to take care of this because you're out of covenant. And there's a danger, and the danger could be that he would follow in Abraham's footsteps and create a mess. So she became his 7th woman in the story's rescuer. And now she enters back into the scene, and she's represented by her father and by her own father. So here we are. Zipporah's back. Jethro, her family, is back. And how does Moses greet this non-Israelite? Well, he's his father-in-law. He's supposed to greet him respectfully. This is true, but the writing team doesn't have to give us this detail. This is an interesting detail for Moses and his team to include. There's all sorts of little details they don't include. People greeting and saying hello and so forth. But they are very specific and intentional about Moses bowing down and kissing him. And they're going into the tent together. This is representative of different lines and families of the earth connecting with each other. Verse 8. Oh, and it gets more interesting. Verse 8. So Moses told his father-in-law everything that Yahweh had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had confronted them on the journey, and how Yahweh had rescued them. And Jethro rejoiced over all the goodness which Yahweh had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians. So Jethro said, "Blessed be Yahweh, who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of Pharaoh, who rescued the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all the Elohim." Indeed, it was proven when they, meaning these Elohim, these other gods, acted insolently against the people. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for Elohim. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law before God. This is actually a really important passage. So Moses is telling a non-Israelite, this is somebody who's representing the families of the earth that have been dispossessed. They're not the chosen line. Moses proclaims the good news to him of what Yahweh has done. And how does he respond? He says, "This is Yahweh. Blessed be Yahweh. And he credits Yahweh with the rescue, with the natsal in Hebrew. He acknowledges that Yahweh is greater than all the Elohim, little l, because it's a word that means gods in addition to meaning the God. Yahweh's greater than all those spiritual beings. And he interprets how Pharaoh was insolent as being the gods of Egypt being insolent against the people. And so what does he do? He's a priest after all. He makes a sacrificial offering to the Elohim, Yahweh. Remember, he's not an Israelite, he's not the chosen, and yet he's offering a priestly offering, which is perfectly good in this story. There's no official priesthood to do this kind of thing yet. At least certainly you would have to be, you would think, a descendant of Israel. But here this guy does it. And then what does he do? He sits down with Aaron and Moses, and they have a meal together in a dwelling. Oh, how good it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. This is a foreshadowing of why Yahweh called Abraham in the first place. It's to be a blessing to the families of the earth, so that there's no division anymore, that the families of the earth come together. This happened several times in Abraham's life, actually. This is a picture of that. There was a reluctant picture with Jacob, if you remember Jacob and Laban finally coming together on the borderland of the promised land by that river. And there was tension, but they reconciled and they had a meal together. It's a covenant meal. That's what this should remind us of. Verse 13. And it came about the next day, this is the very day after they have that covenant meal together in the tent. The next day that Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood before Moses from the morning until evening. Now, when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this devar thing? What is this devar that you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit and all the people stand before you from morning to evening?" And Moses said to his father-in-law, "Well, because the people come to me to inquire of Elohim. And when they have a devar, it comes, a dispute in this case, it comes to me, and I judge between someone and his neighbor, and I make known the statutes of Elohim and his Torah, his instruction." And Moses' father-in-law then said to him, "The devar that you are doing, it's not good. No. You will surely wear out both yourself and these people who are with you." Because they're standing all day, right? Because the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. It's not good. The thing you're doing is not good, verse 17. And then the end of verse 18, you can't do it alone. This is an echo of a really important passage at the beginning of the Bible, page 2. Remember when God said, "No, this is not good. You shouldn't, Adam, be alone." This is not a mistake that it's calling forth that passage. This is this Midianite relative by marriage of Moses who's carrying forth the opinion of God about humans in community. Verse 19. All right. Listen to me. I'll give you counsel, and Elohim be with you. You be the people's representative before Elohim, You bring the devars to Elohim, then admonish them about the statutes and the Torah, and make known to them the way in which they're to walk and the work they're to do. Furthermore, you shall select out of all the people able men who fear Elohim, men of truth, emet, those who hate dishonest gain. And you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Let them judge the people at all times, and let it be that they will bring to you every major devar, matter. But they will judge every minor devar themselves. So it'll be easier for you, and they will carry with you. Now, if you do this devar, and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure. And all these people also will go to their places in peace. You notice I kept bringing out this Hebrew word, devar, which is a very common word. It's a word technically that means word, but it also can mean thing or matter or dispute. In this little conversation of instruction from Jethro, guess how many times total that word or a form of that word occurs? 10. 10. So coming up here, in fact next week, we're going to talk about 10 of something, aren't we? The 10 commandments. Guess what the Hebrew word is for commandments? Devar. This is not accidental. This is a brilliant move this is why I'm saying this stuff is so intentional. This is not just random, hey, we're writing along here. This is a brilliantly curated foreshadowing of these incredible, foundational 10 words, 10 matters, 10 commands from Yahweh that are the foundation of how to understand what he wants humans to begin to be instructed by. And it's introduced by this non-Israelite who's giving advice to his son-in-law. Family of earth, family of heaven. This is, and what does he instruct him to do? He instructs him, you're not supposed to be, to do all the carrying. You can delegate that, which is what an image does. That's the basic understanding of what an image is in the biblical sense. The image of God in Genesis chapter 1, it's many, many things, but the primary thing is that this is God's delegate to rule on earth, this human. And so Jethro is saying, we should do that. You should do what God did for humans, and that's to delegate your rule. So verse 24, Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything that he had said. You can probably underline or highlight that in your notes. Did everything that he had said. We'll talk about that in a second. So Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times. They would bring the difficult matter to Moses, but they would judge every minor matter themselves. And then Moses said goodbye to his father-in-law, and Jethro went his way to his own land. So, it wasn't just that Jethro gave advice and says, I know you're not going to listen to me, this younger generation. I mean, you're an 80-year-old kid here, probably not going to listen, and then went on his way. But Moses listened and did. Listened and did is something, again, it's copy-paste out of another story earlier in the Bible. This is exactly how Noah responded to when Yahweh gave Noah the instructions of building the ark. He listened and did it. He did all that God commanded him. And this is the same wording here, is that Moses did all that Jethro commanded him. And it's going to come up again here later in this book. There's going to be another, and Moses did all that the Lord commanded. And it'll be applied to the people as well. They did all that Moses commanded them. You see how the arc goes here? The ARC, the narrative arc. This is, I put EEE in your notes. That means extended echo effect. Extended echo effect. It's a literary strategy that the biblical authors use, where they take a line from one part, earlier part of the scripture, and they will it'll ripple out like an echo in future stories in the Bible. And it connects these two stories for comparison purposes, which we started to do here. Chapter 19. Okay, so the families of the earth have had a moment where things are working well between them. There's going to be a lot of times in the biblical narrative where the families of the earth are not getting along, including with Israel. It's a mess, many, many times. But this is an example of what Yahweh is hoping to achieve, and does achieve, in the Messiah, Jesus, which is that the families of the earth can now come together and be one family. But we still have this issue with the family of God, and that is that humans who were initially made to be part of Yahweh's family, there's an estrangement that's taken part because the humans have gone their own way. So, is that going to be resolved? Well, we're going to see the beginning of it here. In the third month, anytime you see 3, third, after 3, on the third, it's supposed to light something up in your mind and say, oh, there's that 3 again. What's that related to? The third day of creation, when the living space or new creation emerges out of the waters of chaos. So it's something to do with new creation coming out of death into life, coming out of chaos into order, perhaps associated many times with the time of testing. Third, it's the third month. This isn't a third day, but it's a third month. After the sons of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that very day, they came into the wilderness of Sinai. When they set out from Rephidim, they came to the wilderness of Sinai, camped in the wilderness, and there Israel camped in front of the mountain. You know this mountain? Mount Sinai. This is the mountain where Moses encountered that burning bush and received his commission and call. So Israel has made it to this mountain. Dude, what's that going to look like? So all of Israel, plus as we learned in Exodus chapter 13, there's also a mixed multitude, presumably mostly Egyptians. They're at the very place where Moses stood in the presence of Yahweh when Moses was herding sheep. Remember that? So I wonder if he's also a shepherd now, in a way. And he just got some advice on how to shepherd well. He's coming back to the mountain of God as a shepherd, except this time instead of sheep, it's a whole lot of people. So this is something that is essential, in my opinion, to see to get the most out of the book of Exodus. And that is to see how the Moses team and the authors that or part of this, want us to see the similarities between Moses' own personal journey of faith and the journey of all of Israel up to this point. In chapters 1 and 2, Moses was delivered from the waters, wasn't he? The Hebrew babies were supposed to be thrown into the river and drowned, but he was rescued, wasn't he, through multiple women that participated in this rescue of the baby from the waters of death. And in chapters 14 and 15, Israel was delivered from the waters, weren't they? The Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, what we call the Red Sea, parted. And they walked through these waters of death into right on dry land to the other side. In chapter 2, Moses entered the wilderness because he was exiled because he killed an Egyptian. And what does he find in the wilderness? He finds a well of water. It's the well where he met his future wife. And that's also where the Midianites show up. Well, Israel also enters the wilderness. And remember, they found water that was bitter and they had to throw a tree into it to make it sweet. Remember that? And here we have some Midianites entering the picture. And then in chapters 3 and 4, Moses encountered Yahweh on Mount Sinai at the burning bush and received a commission from Yahweh. Well, in chapters 19 through 31, we're going to spend some time with this one, Moses and the Israelites encounter Yahweh on Mount Sinai and they receive Torah, instruction. Also, in chapter 4, Moses' personal journey, he had a covenant failure, which is another big reason for that strange little story with Zipporah and the foreskin and Yahweh wanting to kill him. There was a covenant failure, and it resulted in blood. There's going to be a covenant failure in Israel's story in chapter 32 that will result in blood. And Moses' personal story, well, Yahweh delivers him, and with him, his entire Israelite family in chapters 5 through 13. Well, we see that paralleled and compared to Yahweh forgiving Israel and giving Israel his words and his presence, which he does in the final chapters of Exodus. Why am I saying all this? Moses' own personal journey, the biblical authors write about it in such a way so that we can see a pattern in Israel's journey and to apply that pattern, I believe, to what Yahweh does in our own lives. Notice that in each of their cases that it's after the calling and the choosing that they have a failure. And there's consequences to the failure. But Yahweh doesn't give up on them, does he? He awards his presence anyway. Verse 3. So Moses went up to Elohim. This is on the mountain. And Yahweh called to him from the mountain, saying, this is what you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on eagle's wings. Just pause for a second there. Remember how Moses said he had to carry all these people? He's not. Yahweh is the one who's carrying these people. That's part of what Jethro was trying to get across to him, I think. Yahweh says, and I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among all the peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me, what? A kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you should speak to the sons of Israel. Okay, so Moses goes up, he now not to get a commission for himself, but a commission for all of Israel. And Yahweh says, I've rescued you. So salvation has happened. This picture of salvation has occurred. I brought you to myself. So, just a reminder, in the book of Exodus, what comes first? Obedience to the law or salvation? Salvation. Salvation comes first, before works, before the law. First it's salvation. It's not just a New Testament concept. Salvation precedes obedience. It's biblical. And he's saying, now keep the covenant. I'm going to make you my possession. What does that mean? What my possession means, starting at Genesis chapter 12, is your purpose. Your purpose. And what is their purpose, you may ask? To be a kingdom of priests. Because all the earth is mine, right? What does that mean, all the earth is mine? Why would he say that? Of course all the earth is his. He's the creator. This is a reminder that all the people of the earth are his. It's not just Israel. Ultimately, even though they're dispossessed and following other gods and so forth, God's plan is for all the earth, all the peoples, all the different nations and people groups and ethnicities and languages, that all of them he has a heart for. And so, your purpose is to be priests. What is a priest again? Somebody who mediates and intercedes for somebody else. He's saying here that his intention is for the whole nation to be that. All of them to be a kingdom of priests. Can you imagine that? Every single one of them being a priest, decked out like a priest. As far as the clothing goes, I don't know. But the idea was for every single Israelite to be called to be an intercessor on behalf of those who are non-Israelites. And that's what will make them a sacred, set-apart nation. That's their calling. That doesn't work out, by the way. Not every single Israelite in just a few chapters ends up being a priest. Doesn't happen. So does Yahweh give up entirely? And the reason it doesn't happen is because of a massive failure. It was awful. So that instead they become a kingdom with priests instead of a kingdom of priests. So it's like plan B. But does Yahweh give up entirely on having an entire nation of priests? Well, according to the Apostle Peter, in his first letter, he's talking to Jewish and non-Jewish followers of Jesus in this letter. He says, y'all, this is second person plural, y'all are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that y'all may declare the praise of him who called y'all out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once y'all were not a people, but now y'all are the people of God. Once y'all had not received mercy, but now y'all have received mercy. In Peter's opinion, in the New Testament, God did not give up on this idea of having an entire people acting as priests and intercessors. Why? Just so they could get to heaven only? So that they could intercede for those who are not in the nation. The whole point of being elect is so that you can share the good news of Jesus and intercede on behalf of those who are not elect. They're not in Christ. Why? So that they can become in Christ and participate as well. I know this brings up all sorts of logical questions, but this is the purpose of election, is to be someone that blesses the non-chosen so that they too can be a part of blessing others. That's the idea. That's what Abraham was called to do. That's what Yahweh is saying here he intends for Israel, which Israel fails in a few chapters at that. So instead they get like representative priests. But that is what was fulfilled in Jesus. That all those who follow Jesus now are grafted into this tree of promise. It's like, think of Israel as like a chosen river. And God is not taking anything away. I don't subscribe to replacement theology. But all these other streams of the nations, all the earth is his. It was always his intention to bless the families of the earth through that stream. And it is in Christ, Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, that now we get to participate in election and ourselves be a blessing to the families of the earth. As the church. I'm sorry, that just lights me up. That is so awesome to me. It's like it is the gospel, a big part of it. Verse 7, so Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words which the Lord had commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. So far, so good. And Moses brought back the words of the people to Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Moses, look, I'm going to come to you in a thick cloud so that the people may hear when I speak with you and may also trust in you forever. And Moses told the words of the people to Yahweh. So the people are like, we'll do this. We'll be the priests. And Yahweh's like, my presence will encourage the people to trust your leadership. Verse 10, the Lord also said to Moses, all right, go to the people, consecrate them. This is a ritual being prepared for the sacred presence. Consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes. Have them ready for what? The third day. You're going to ritually cleanse yourself so that you can be in the proper mindset for this new creation that I'm bringing about in your calling and in your role. Third day. For on the third day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Of course it's going to be on the third day that the Lord appears, right? Of course. All right, verse 12. But you shall set boundaries for the people all around, saying, be careful that you don't go up the mountain or touch the border of it, because whoever touches the mountain shall certainly be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he'll certainly be stoned or shot through. Whether it's an animal or a person, won't live. So the idea here is until the next part of the verse, until this ram's horn blows, you cannot touch the mountain. It means death. It means death, because the consecration has to be complete. Why a ram's horn? Is there a story having to do with the ram that's already happened? Genesis chapter 22. On the third day, Abraham brought his bound son to the altar to sacrifice him, his only son. And his son was replaced by a ram caught in the thicket. This is, y'all. We are supposed to see that before you can get into the presence of God, that substitute has to be given. So when the ram's horn sounds a long blast, then they shall come up to the mountain. So the mountain is accessible after that blast of ruach, wind. Remember, it's the same word in Hebrew, wind, air, breath, spirit, through the ram's horn. Verse 14. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people consecrated the people, they washed their garments, and he said to the people, be ready for the third day. Don't go near a woman. I know in English it sounds like so, what does he mean? He doesn't mean, okay, women. No, it's a way of saying you need to fast sexual intimacy. That's part of your consecration. Why? Is there anything wrong with sexual intimacy? No, that was like the first thing that God told humans to do, was to be fruitful and multiply, right? So there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's holy. But he's saying for the purpose of coming into the presence of God, we're gonna take all the ritual requirements of purity. It's like fasting. It's like fasting. Is there anything wrong with eating? Of course not. But fasting is like a ritual setting aside time and denying yourself. So this coming to Yahweh on the mountain, it's like a betrothal ceremony. And you're keeping yourself for this betrothal ceremony with the creator of the universe. This is what it's patterned after. More about that in future chapters. Verse 16. So it came about on the third day, when it was morning, that there were thunder and lightning flashes and a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet sound, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. Imagine what they were seeing and hearing. It was just described. So you can come now. Verse 18. Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke because the Lord descended upon it, and fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the entire mountain quaked violently. So when the sound of this trumpet, like the ram's horn is blowing now, grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him with thunder. And the Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and Yahweh called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. So the mountain was fearsome. When God called Moses to go up, Moses went. I mean, thunder, smoke, fire, flashes, quaking earth, and he just goes up. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, verse 21, go down, warn the people so they don't break through the Lord to stare. It's like saying don't stare at the sun, okay? And many of them perish. Also have the priests who approach the Lord. Who are the priests? All of them. Who approach the Lord, consecrate themselves, or else the Lord will break out against them. So here's the instructions for going up the mountain to the people. Don't stare at God, or it'll cause you to perish. And let everyone, because they're all priests, remember, they're a nation of priests, consecrate themselves. Very simple procedure to approach Yahweh. Just these two things, and you'll be good. I'm trying to protect you. The sun is in your midst. Don't stare at it. Verse 23. And Moses said to Yahweh, people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, set boundaries around the mountain, consecrate it. Why did he have to remind Yahweh? What? Then Yahweh said to him, all right, go down, come up again, you and Aaron with you. Don't let the priests, the people break through to come up to the Lord, or he'll break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them, what just happened? They were supposed to go up to the mountain, and now it's like, no, don't let them go up. Why did Moses say, hey, about that? They can't. Remember those boundaries you set? And then Yahweh changes the instructions, like in the space of a few lines here. Now only Moses and Aaron can approach, not the priests and not the people. So this gap of what just happened here has been subject of great debate, as you can imagine, among scholars. Some scholars, I think the majority scholarship, represented wonderfully by Dr. Carmen Imes, I hope you got to listen to her in the pre-work, are of the opinion that, yeah, they were never supposed to actually go up the mountain as a people. That would result in death. So they did the right thing in humility by saying through Moses, I don't think so. There's another line of thought represented very well by Dr. John Sailhammer, who's no longer with us, but he's an incredible scholar on the Pentateuch, on the first 5 books of the Bible, who has posited, along with others, that actually the people here decided not to go up the mountain, and this was a problem. This was a problem. And one of the places Dr. Sailhammer gets this is from the last book of the 5 books of the Bible, of the Torah, and that's Deuteronomy chapter 5. When Moses is looking back to this incident and describing it to them, he includes some additional information. Moses, when he's talking to the people about this, he says, the Lord spoke with you face to face at the mountain from the midst of the fire. And while I was standing between Yahweh and you at that time to declare to you the word of Yahweh, because you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up on the mountain. So John Sailhammer's opinion, and other scholars, is that this was a fail on the part of Israel. They should have gone up the mountain and trusted God, but Yahweh was aware of their lack of trust in him, that they were scared, and so he accommodated them. But that it would have been better if they had gone up the mountain. So choose whoever, you want to listen to there. I guess it's not a big deal, but it could be a red flag. They did not go up the mountain. So let's get some reflections from our table here and see if we have any questions. Thoughts, reflections?
So I thought the part where Moses' father-in-law Jethro came was pretty interesting. He was a priest of Midian, so obviously he worshipped other gods.
The text does not say.
It doesn't, but
Yeah.
I'll make a big assumption. Not that I'm a Bible scholar like you are, but I'll make that assumption. But it said, now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods, and he made a sacrifice to him. So now it makes me wonder, when he went home, did he stop worshiping the other gods and just worship Yahweh? I mean, he acknowledged he was greater than all other gods.
Yeah.
The Bible doesn't say, but it makes you wonder, why would he worship any other gods when he said, God's it? I mean, Yahweh's the greatest God that there is, and he made a sacrifice.
Yeah, that's a great question. What did Jethro do after that? We don't have an answer in the scripture, but we do have an answer about what the Israelites do. Did they give up worshiping other gods? I'm not going to spoil it, although you can read ahead if you want.
I won't either.
So there was 2 things that I was thinking about when you were sharing. So one of them was between Moses and Jethro being the father-in-law. I kept thinking of the example of God, our Father, and how Moses was being obedient, I guess in a way, because you kept saying listen and did.
Yes.
So it just made me think of how much better our life would be because it worked out for Moses to listen and did, so to speak. And then the other thing I thought about was obviously Jesus' sacrifice when you brought up the ram's horn and we need to cleanse ourselves and then the third day and then there was the thunder and the lightning and it made me think of his sacrifice tore down that wall to where we could have that relationship with our God.
I think that's what we're supposed to think about. I think that's what Jesus taught the disciples in Luke, is it 24, when he was showing them through all the scriptures how it was all about him. I think that this is the kind of thing that he would have talked about. We might have time for one.
So what this question's asking is, were there other non-chosen people, non-Israelites, at this time that worshipped Yahweh?
What a great question. Thank you, Santella, for picking that one. How many of you appreciate Santella? She's such a blessing. Yeah, the text is a little ambiguous about this. The assumption would be that, the Israelites barely knew Yahweh, so who else is going to know him? But we have these interesting things that happen so far in the scriptures. We have this priest, a high priest in Salem, which becomes later Jerusalem, which is a Canaanite city named Melchizedek or Melchizedek. And he's a priest of the Most High God. And he actually takes a tithe from Abraham and serves him bread and wine. They have a covenant meal together. It's crazy, isn't it? We have these hints of these line of Abraham people who come out of nowhere and do the bidding of Yahweh. We have Yahweh talking to a pagan king about, you need to be careful not to touch Isaac's wife. He's like protecting him. So yes, Yahweh is interacting with people that are not Israelites. In fact, Abraham was not an Israelite because Israel was his grandson. So how could he be? At any rate, you see what I'm saying? So yes, there does seem to be quite a bit of interaction. It's more nuanced and complex than sometimes we try to impose on the scriptures. Great question, which we will be exploring further in the weeks ahead. And next week, 10 Commandments. Get ready. Y'all are awesome. Love you guys.